Well, once upon a time on Studio 10, we had an award-winning author on our show taking us through the magical world of Turnival.
But wait a minute, that's not once upon a time. It's today.
That's right.
Because joining us is Sarah Arthur, the author of Once a Queen and Once a Castle. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Thanks, you too. Love being here.
Yes, we're so excited to have you on for Ask the Author because we do love to highlight different authors in our area that are writing just great works. But before we dive into kind of this fantasy series, we want to ask though, what made you want to become an author and a writer in the first place?
So many writers get asked this question and it's really challenging to answer because it's one of those things that's hard to explain because it's just deep in you from the time you're really small, whether it's to tell your story or to write a poem. And even before I could pick up a pencil and write an actual word, I would pretend. I would pretend to write books.
Yeah, I love that.
And I love that.
So it was in me, it's just there.
Yeah. And the fact that it was in you and you made sure you listened to it and you followed through with it, and through that, you've been able to write a lot of books for both teens and adults.
Yes.
But let's start with Once a Queen. What inspired that novel?
This novel was 20 years in the making, so I was in the midst of getting to write a bunch of nonfiction, actually, about, themes in different great stories and great movies for teenagers. And the seed of this book came to me and got planted in my heart. And it was over time, I would just keep working on it. And eventually, Eva's story, and it's a story of a 14-year-old teenager who meets her grandmother in England for the first time, really began to take shape. And I knew it was time to make the switch from 12 nonfiction books to fiction for teens.
Wow. Yes, and that's absolutely amazing. And not only did you create this novel, but you continued it. What made you want to write a sequel and kind of continue this fiction? Did it just get you hooked?
Yeah, so Once a Queen, once we dove into that, we realized there's more to this story. And so we began to layer, and when I say we, by the time your book gets in the hand of editors, it's like a puzzle. They're adding pieces, you're adding pieces, and eventually the picture's starting to come together. Eva Joyce in England with Once a Queen has a best friend named Frankie that she gets to know that summer, and his little siblings show up at the end of Once a Queen. And of course, that's on purpose because I wanted to tell their stories. It opens with a giant who shows up in a valley nearby their little village. And if you have a giant, you have to have a Jack.
Oh, of course.
So Jack becomes one of our main characters in Once a Castle. And they're still trying to probe if these fairy tale worlds are true and if you can get there from our world. And, do you have to outgrow all these stories and this love of adventure when you grow up? And that's a big theme for students, I think.
Well,
was for me
Yeah.
as a teenager.
Love to hear that. Well, actually, both books are actually out on shelves, but this Saturday we can meet you at Hooked Book Launch. So talk to us about what you hope to kind of start that conversation about with readers.
Yeah, so this Saturday at Hooked Bookstore in Lansing, a local indie bookstore, I get the great fun of introducing readers to Once a Castle, which is the second book, just came out. And we're going to talk about what is it when you're writing that, as a grown-up, you're writing for teenagers, but as Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Wrinkle in Time, once said, I'm all the ages I have ever been. And so how do you put yourself in that space where young people are making the turn towards adulthood with all of the challenges and the fun and that feeling of like stepping from one world to another? How do you do that? And also they get a chance to ask me questions, and I'll be reading aloud from some of it, and it's going to be great fun. And we'll have giveways. It's a party.
Yeah, it's a party. It's got to be a party.
And we need a party right about now in February.
We do need a party to warm us up a little bit.
Correct.
And we're going to continue that party right here on Studio 10 because you are sticking around and helping us write a little story of our own because you've inspired us so much. So that's going to be coming up after the break.
Thank you.
Buckle up, guys.